They say room 306 hasn't been touched since the fall of 1999. Not officially, at least. Housekeeping skips it without question. Guests never ask for it, and if they accidentally end up with the keys, they come back to the front desk, looking a little pale. No one on staff says much. Just a shrug, a glance toward the top floor, and then they change the subject. But behind that faded brass door, where the number plaque has dulled to a weary bronze, everything remains just as it was. The beds are still made, sheets pulled tight, hospital corners so crisp it looks like the mattress might bite you. The phone sits on the nightstand, unplugged, but dead in a way that feels older than disconnection. The mini fridge still hums, the only real sound in the room. Not loud, not broken, just persistent, like it's guarding something. And then there's the logbook, a dusty, leather-bound guest registry kept at the front desk of the Mountain Crest Lodge, a backcountry hotel tucked into the woods of southern Colorado. Not quite famous, not quite forgotten. The kind of place hunters and drifters and broken-hearted people pass through when they need to be nowhere for a little while. Flip to the page marked October 8th, 1999. You'll see his name, Daniel R. Mayfield. Check-in time, 11:46 p.m. Check-out time, never recorded. There's no forwarding address, no emergency contact. Just a signature, jagged and quick, like it was written while looking over a shoulder or under pressure. And since that night, no one else has ever stayed there. It wasn't closed for renovation, it wasn't taped off by police, it just never opened again. And maybe that's for the best, because the last man who walked into room 306, Daniel Mayfield, was never seen again. To understand why, you need to know who he was. But that's the first twist, because Daniel wasn't famous, wasn't rich, wasn't a wanted man or a person of interest. On paper, he was nobody. A software engineer from Portland, Oregon. Age, 33, single, average build, brown hair, quiet. The kind of face that fades from memory 5 minutes after meeting him. His colleagues described him as competent, polite, a little aloof. His neighbors barely remembered him. One said, he kept his lawn neat, took his trash out on Tuesdays, never made a sound. And yet something drove this ordinary man nearly 1,200 miles across the country, from the rainy suburbs of Portland to a lodge tucked between dying aspens and bare pine trees. He booked no return flight, told no friends, left no note. And when he checked into room 306, he said just one thing to the clerk. Just one night, I need to clear my head. What was he running from? That question has haunted everyone who's dared look deeper. Because there's something about room 306, something about the way it preserves that night, like a shrine to the unknown, that makes people believe this wasn't just a disappearance, this was a reveal, a trap, a reckoning decades in the making. Some believe Daniel took his own life, that the weight of his own guilt crushed him in the silence of that dark room. Some say it was darker than suicide, that Daniel Mayfield didn't vanish, he was taken by something that had followed him for years, something that finally caught up to him the moment he turned the key. Others believe it was justice, delayed, buried, finally clawing its way out of the past. And there's a fourth theory, the one no one says out loud, that Daniel Mayfield didn't disappear at all, that he's still in the room, somewhere, some way, watching, waiting, because room 306 has stories now. Stories whispered by guests who slept one floor beneath it and woke up chilled to the bone. Stories of footsteps pacing above their heads when no one was booked in the room. Of flickering lights around 3:12 a.m., always 3:12 a.m., and mirrors that fog up in the bathroom even when the shower isn't running, revealing the same word, written in reverse, why. So this is where we begin, at the place Daniel Mayfield was last seen. This room, suspended in time, holding its breath, a stage set for something no one's ever been able to explain. Not fully, because when you start asking questions about room 306, you're not just unraveling a disappearance, you're unsealing a grave, a memory, a secret. One that began long before Daniel ever stepped foot into Mountain Crest Lodge. One that leads back to a little girl, a forest, and a town that swore to forget what it never could forgive. This is the story of the man who checked in, but never checked out, and it starts with a key. The morning after Daniel Mayfield checked in, room 306 remained silent. At precisely 11:15 a.m., the cleaning crew made their routine rounds. One housekeeper, her name never released publicly, knocked on the door of room 306. No answer. But the Do Not Disturb tag hung neatly on the brass handle, swinging slightly, like it had been placed there gently. Maybe recently, maybe hours ago. Following standard policy, she moved on to the next room, making a mental note to circle back later. Guests oversleep. Guests get sick. Guests forget the checkout time. It happens. But something about this door, this silence, it left her uneasy. She reportedly described it as a kind of wrong quiet, like the room was holding its breath. By 3 p.m., the unease had reached the front desk. Daniel hadn't called, hadn't checked out. His keycard was still active. No movement on the lodge's internal hallway cameras, at least not from room 306. The last motion detected was Daniel entering the room at 12:03 a.m. After that, nothing. The manager, a man named Curtis Doyle, decided to do a welfare check. It wasn't protocol to enter without real cause, but something in his gut said this was a cause. He knocked 3 times, no answer. He waited, hand hovering over the door handle, before finally using his master key. The room opened into stillness. There were no signs of a struggle, no overturned chairs, no blood, no broken windows, nothing that screamed crime scene. But the details, they whispered. The bed had a single dip in the center of the mattress, as if someone sat there for a moment, unsure whether to lie down or stand back up. The pillow was undisturbed. The lamp on the nightstand was still on, casting a yellow circle of light against the shadows of the far wall. A half-empty glass of water sat beside it, with faint condensation still clinging to the outside. A navy blue duffel bag rested on the luggage rack, zipped, untouched. Daniel's laptop sat closed on the desk, its charging light blinking slowly, like a tired heartbeat. No wallet, no phone, no ID. Curtis would later tell police, it was like the room was waiting for him to return, like he'd stepped out for air and just never came back. Authorities arrived within 45 minutes. The room was sealed off, photos were taken, dust was lifted from every surface. The fingerprints told a short story. Only 2 sets were found, Daniel's, matching his Oregon DMV records, and hotel staff, mostly on surfaces like the door handle, the TV remote, and the light switch. No foreign prints, no blood. His duffel bag contained clothes for 2 days, a razor, and a bottle of melatonin. He had left no suicide note, no itinerary, just his belongings, in perfect order, and a laptop that held the only clue. When forensic techs opened it, they found a single, unsaved document. No title, just open, blinking. Yet, it read, I can't sleep anymore. The dreams are getting worse. It's not just it's her. I see her every night, in the mirror. In the woods, in the cracks in the wall. She's always waiting. I never told anyone what happened in 1989, but I think she remembers. I hear her whispering my name, even when I'm awake. Police were quick to dismiss the file. No evidence of foul play, no indication of a crime, just a strange, emotionally fraught message from a stressed man, likely suffering a mental breakdown. That conclusion, however, didn't sit right with everyone. The case was barely 2 days old when local crime journalist Lena Kerrigan received a call from an anonymous tip line. A woman's voice, soft, shaky. He wasn't crazy, the voice said. He was haunted. Lena had been covering Colorado's unsolved cases for years. She'd seen her share of missing hikers, cabin suicides, and cold case abductions. But something about room 306 and Daniel Mayfield tugged at her instincts. She started digging, public records, school files, travel history. The deeper she looked, the less random Daniel's disappearance seemed. According to the lodge's registration form, Daniel hadn't just wandered into the hotel, he had specifically requested room 306. Not just a room on the top floor, not whatever's available, he named the number. And when Lena requested old lodge booking records, something else stood out. Room 306 had been the site of 2 prior incidents. In 1985, a man checked in and claimed to hear children running in the walls. He left in the middle of the night. In 1992, a woman attempted suicide in the bathtub. She survived but claimed she was following the girl's voice. Lena asked the current staff about these reports. They hadn't heard a word. The previous owners hadn't mentioned any of it during the sale. When Lena pushed further, she found a brief news clipping from 2003 about a hiking group that reported whispers in the woods behind the lodge. They'd laughed it off at the time, but the whispers, the mirror, the woods, they were all in Daniel's note. It no longer felt like coincidence. It felt like a pattern. By day 4, the case was fading from public interest. Another missing man, another motel mystery. The world moves on fast when there's no blood on the floor. But Lena didn't stop. Because the timeline? It didn't add up. The records showed Daniel never used his hotel phone, never connected to the Wi-Fi. He didn't go downstairs. No sightings, no hallway footage after midnight. He simply vanished. Except for one thing. One guest, in room 304, told police they heard a single knock in the hallway around 3:14 a.m. Then silence. Then, faintly, laughter, a child's laughter, just for a second, then nothing. The call to the local authorities came in at 3:47 p.m. The front desk manager, Paul Tennyson, paced the lobby nervously, phone pressed to his ear as he glanced back toward the elevator. His voice, calm on the surface, carried the undertone of something deeply unsettled. "It's probably nothing," he told dispatch, "but we've had a guest vanish. No signs of checkout, no calls, no answer at the door." Deputies from the Summit County Sheriff's Office arrived within 20 minutes. Mountain Crest Lodge, nestled against the sprawling blue pine forest, wasn't known for trouble. But something about room 306 already felt off. Officers conducted a preliminary search of the room. There was no forced entry, no blood, no struggle, no fingerprints other than Daniel's and those of the housekeeping staff. His personal belongings remained untouched. A navy blue duffel bag, his laptop, a wallet with $120 in cash, 2 unused credit cards, and his Oregon State ID. The duffel contained a change of clothes, a toothbrush, and a travel-sized bottle of melatonin. But Daniel Mayfield himself had vanished, as if swallowed whole by the sterile walls of the hotel. The sheriff, Ellen Cortez, ordered the room sealed. Forensic technicians were brought in the next morning. They dusted for latent prints, collected fibers, and began analyzing the contents of the laptop. It didn't take long before they uncovered something strange. A single Word document titled simply, "I can't sleep anymore." The document was less than a page long. It read like a fragmented journal entry. "The dreams are getting worse. It's not just shadows anymore. It's her. I see her every night, in the mirror, in the woods, in the cracks in the wall. She's always waiting. I never told anyone what happened in 1989, but I think she remembers. I hear her whispering my name, even when I'm awake." There was no context, no additional documents, no draft emails or saved chats. The tech team scoured his browser history but found nothing recent. No travel plans, no communication logs, no searches. It was as if Daniel had scrubbed his digital presence clean before checking in. Sheriff Cortez tried to contact Daniel's next of kin. His emergency contact was listed as a younger sister, Camille Mayfield, residing in Portland. When they reached her, Camille was shocked. "Daniel just wanted some time off," she said. "He told me he needed space, but he said he'd call once he cleared his head." Investigators reviewed hotel surveillance footage. The grainy black and white cameras offered limited visibility, but they did confirm Daniel's check-in at 11:48 p.m. He appeared alone, wearing a gray hoodie, jeans, and sneakers. He carried a single duffel bag and nodded briefly to the night clerk. What unsettled detectives was what wasn't there. There was no footage of Daniel leaving the room, not down the hallway, not at the elevator, not through the stairwell. He had gone up and simply never came down. For the first 48 hours, authorities considered every possibility: a voluntary disappearance, a suicide, even a possible abduction. But no evidence supported any of those theories. And then, the details in the journal entry started raising questions no one could explain. "I never told anyone what happened in 1989. Those words, buried deep in Daniel's final message, hinted at something long buried, something personal, something he feared had returned. Sheriff Cortez passed the note along to the Behavioral Analysis Unit, hoping someone could decipher what it meant. But it wasn't a profiler who found the first clue. It was a journalist. Lena Kerrigan had been covering crime in Colorado for over a decade. She wasn't just intrigued by mysteries, she lived for them. When she caught wind of a man vanishing from a sealed hotel room with no signs of escape, her instincts fired up. "It's not just a disappearance," she told her editor. "It's a confession hidden in plain sight." Kerrigan obtained a copy of the journal entry and fixated on the year mentioned, 1989. She ran Daniel's name through old public records, digging into census data, yearbooks, school registries. Her search led her to a small Appalachian town hundreds of miles away, Mason, West Virginia. There she found something chilling, a 1989 report of a missing 10-year-old girl named Sadie Ellison. Her last known location? The woods behind the house where 13-year-old Daniel Mayfield lived. Police had briefly investigated the boy at the time, who's the last person known to have spoken to Sadie before she vanished. Rumors swirled that they'd been playing together and fought, that Daniel came home with scratches on his arms, that his shirt was stained with something his mother dismissed as berry juice. No body was ever found, no charges were filed. Daniel's family left town 3 months later. The case went cold, frozen in time. But now, with his eerie note and unexplained disappearance, the case took on a new life. Kerrigan approached the sheriff with her findings, and though some dismissed it as coincidence, Sheriff Cortez ordered a deeper investigation into Daniel's past. Meanwhile, rumors began to swirl around room 306. One guest, staying in the room directly across the hall, claimed to hear soft crying around 3:12 a.m., the estimated window of Daniel's disappearance, even though no one was inside. Another reported a mirror in the lobby fogging up with the word Y in reverse. Investigators took these claims with a grain of salt, but they couldn't deny the undercurrent of something deeply wrong. This wasn't just a missing person case anymore. It was the beginning of something far darker. A decades-old secret clawing its way back into the light, and it all started with a quiet man who checked into room 306 and never checked out. The story until now had been a whisper of mystery, a vanished man, a disturbed hotel room, a cryptic journal entry. But as the investigation stalled, it took an unexpected turn. The name Daniel R. Mayfield, once just another missing person in a growing list, began to resonate with one particular individual, Lena Kerrigan, a crime journalist with a reputation for digging where no one else dared. Something in Daniel's final words struck her deeply. "I never told anyone what happened in 1989, but I think she remembers." It was more than poetic, it sounded like a confession. Lena began combing through archived newspapers, digital obituary logs, and forums dedicated to unsolved mysteries. The key detail came not from a police file, but from a now-defunct forum post archived from 2009. Someone had asked if anyone remembered the disappearance of a girl named Sadie Ellison in a small town in West Virginia. Only one user responded. "I remember. It was Mason, 1989. Her name was Sadie. They said she was last seen in the woods behind her best friend's house. A boy. Name was Daniel." That was enough for Lena. She booked a flight to Mason the next morning. Mason, West Virginia, was one of those towns that never changed. You could tell by the way gas stations still had analog pumps, and the diners' laminated menus hadn't been updated since the Reagan administration. Lena found the town tucked beneath hills, quiet and largely forgotten. But in the local library, dusty and nearly abandoned, she found a microfilm archive of the town's weekly paper, the Mason Gazette, October 12, 1989, headline, "10-year-old girl missing after wandering into woods." The article was brief. Sadie Ellison, last seen wearing a pink sweater and denim overalls, had been playing near her home when she vanished. A search party was deployed, and the woods behind the Mayfield residence were thoroughly investigated. Nothing was found. The article didn't mention Daniel by name, but Lena noticed something curious. In a follow-up piece weeks later, it was reported that the Mayfield family abruptly moved out of Mason. No interviews, no forwarding address, just gone. Lena dug deeper. School records confirmed Daniel and Sadie were classmates. Neighbors described them as close but odd, often playing alone in the woods. There were rumors, idle gossip at the time, that the two had a fight the day before Sadie disappeared. Something about a broken toy, a stolen book. One neighbor said she remembered Daniel coming home with a torn shirt and red stains on his jeans. At the time, no one dared suggest more than an accident. The Mayfields were a quiet family. Daniel's father was a local mechanic, his mother, a Sunday school teacher. But now, with Sadie still missing and Daniel missing too, the dots began to connect in Lena's mind. She returned to Portland and interviewed Daniel's old colleagues, looking for signs of trauma or guilt. Most described him as quiet, introverted, sometimes distracted. But one co-worker shared a strange anecdote. A few weeks before Daniel disappeared, he had been found in the break room, staring blankly into a mirror. When asked what was wrong, he reportedly said, "I think I saw her, in the glass, just for a second." Haunted by this, Lena petitioned local law enforcement to reopen the cold case on Sadie Ellison. Initially, they refused. Too old, too little evidence. But once the Mountain Crest Lodge investigation revealed a missing guest with a possible tie to an unsolved child disappearance, things shifted. Cadaver dogs were brought in. The woods behind the lodge, eerily similar to the woods behind Daniel's childhood home, were searched with renewed urgency. And what they found would change everything. When the remains of Sadie Ellison were discovered, the headlines were brutal, unrelenting. But the real storm came in the days that followed, when the world turned its attention back to Daniel Mayfield. Was he a killer finally unmasked by guilt? A man broken by a childhood secret? Or was something far more chilling at work? Social media exploded with wild theories. News vans camped outside the Mountain Crest Lodge. Talk shows booked anyone who claimed to have known Daniel. Some said he was possessed. Others whispered about a ghost's revenge. And in one dark corner of the internet, a post began circulating under the title, "The Room That Remembers." It claimed room 306 wasn't just a place, it was a portal, a trap set by a restless soul. That Daniel hadn't vanished, he had been taken. The rational perspective. Local law enforcement, faced with growing media pressure, released an official statement. It read, "At this time, the disappearance of Daniel Mayfield is not considered suspicious. While tragic, we have no evidence of foul play." But no body, no suicide note, no trail. That alone kept the fire of speculation alive. Dr. Clara Huang, a criminal psychologist from the University of Colorado, weighed in publicly. She studied Daniel's journal entry, his work history, and his childhood. There is a strong possibility of a psychological break. Survivors of traumatic events often repress or reframe memories. If Daniel truly witnessed something as a boy, the rediscovery of that trauma, tied with the isolation of the lodge, may have created a dissociative episode. Translation: Daniel may have lost touch with reality, wandered off, perished in the woods far beyond the lodge's perimeter. Except that theory had a flaw. Search parties had combed 10 square miles around Mountain Crest. No clothing, no items, no tracks. If Daniel had run, he left no footprint behind, not even one. The supernatural theories. But it was the unexplained occurrences that refused to die. Guests who stayed on the same floor as room 306 reported strange sounds at night, footsteps that stopped at their doors, soft weeping, a child's laughter when no children were checked in. One couple claimed their room phone rang at exactly 3:12 a.m. When they answered, it was silent, just static. They were in room 308, adjacent to the sealed 306. Paranormal investigators were drawn in like moths to a flame. EMF readings spiked near the door of 306. One investigator reported faint writing on the wall visible only through thermal cameras. "I remember." It matched the timestamp of Daniel's document, the journal entry titled, "I Can't Sleep Anymore." Reddit forums lit up with comparisons to other haunted places. The Cecil Hotel, room 1046, the Villisca Axe House. But none matched the eerie timeline, nor the emotionally tangled history, quite like room 306. A YouTube video by the popular channel Urban Myth Files titled "The Lodge That Speaks" gained over 4 million views. It suggested the lodge was built over sacred ground, an old burial site disturbed in the 1950s. There was no proof, just shadows and suggestion. But isn't that what fear feeds on? The legend deepens. Halloween night 2020. A group of amateur ghost hunters snuck into Mountain Crest Lodge. They live-streamed from the hallway outside room 306. The footage is shaky, but viewers swear the door handle moved. The sound of a girl's voice, muffled, pleading, can be heard for 3 seconds. The stream cut out. When police arrived, the group was gone. Their gear was found stacked neatly in the hallway. Cameras, flashlights, even their car keys, but not the hunters themselves. They were located at dawn, nearly 5 miles into the woods, barefoot and confused. They had no memory of how they got there. Every Halloween since, people try to get close to room 306. The lodge has since installed security cameras and posted guards during October. But strange things continue to happen. Daniel's family speaks. In a rare interview, Daniel's sister Melanie spoke on a true crime podcast called Where the Dark Ends. He was always sensitive, quiet, but kind. I don't think he was a monster. I think something got stuck to him. I think the past never let go. When asked if she believed Daniel was still alive, Melanie paused. Her voice cracked. I think he's trapped, somewhere between guilt and whatever came for him. To this day, room 306 remains closed to the public, but it's never truly silent. Guests still report flickering lights, TVs powering on at 3:12 a.m., doors that lock from the inside when no one's in the room. It's as if the room itself is waiting. For what? No one knows. For a town long haunted by questions, closure arrived not with a confession, but with bones in the earth. Sadie Ellison was finally laid to rest in Mason, West Virginia, 33 years after she vanished into the trees. A funeral, small but solemn, was held on a gray November morning. The cemetery sat atop a hill where bare oaks groaned under the weight of winter's approach. Locals stood in clusters, bundled against the chill, as Sadie's tiny casket was lowered beside the graves of her parents. It had rained the night before, not heavy, but enough to soften the ground and shroud the morning in fog. The pastor's voice trembled as he read the eulogy, pausing mid-sentence as a flock of blackbirds lifted from a nearby tree, their wings slicing the silence. No music, no speeches, just 3 words carved in pink granite. No longer lost. It was closure, but it was not peace. Daniel Mayfield's fate remains uncertain. His name, still etched into databases as a missing person, flickers through online forums and digital flyers. Portland police keep his case file open, albeit cold. Every so often, a reported sighting surfaces. A gas station security cam in Idaho, a drifter sleeping near train tracks in Denver, a man matching Daniel's description leaving a motel in Arizona. None are confirmed. In 2021, on what would have been his 45th birthday, Daniel's family held a memorial in Portland. It wasn't a funeral. There was no casket, just photographs. A boy on a swing set, a teenager in braces, a man in a gray suit, always half smiling, and a letter his sister read aloud. In it, she begged Daniel to come home. She promised forgiveness, promised that the past could be understood, even if not undone. No one from Mason attended. Some still whisper that Daniel was a killer, that his guilt grew too large to contain, spilling over in the form of disappearances and dreams. Others argue he was a boy caught in the wrong place, with the wrong secret, and a silence so loud it echoed for decades. And then there are the believers, the ones who speak softly, eyes darting toward shadows. They think Daniel was taken, not by police, not by guilt, but by her. Room 306 remains closed to the public. The Mountain Crest Lodge, once just a roadside motel forgotten by time, is now a fixture in true crime tourism. The room that remembers, as it's been dubbed online, is sealed with a wooden plank, a faux padlock nailed for dramatic effect. Guests aren't allowed in, staff won't discuss it, but every now and then someone sneaks a peek, and they all report the same thing. The bed remains made. The lamp is still on. The mirror, the one facing the bathroom, fogs up at exactly 3:12 a.m. No one knows why. No heating pipes run behind the wall. The room has no guests, no humidity, no functioning shower. Yet each morning, maintenance finds the word "why" traced in reverse. Some say it's a trick, a gimmick to sell ghost tours and merchandise. Others believe it's a question still echoing from a child lost too soon, or a man who disappeared too late. The documentary you're watching now, The Man Who Checked In But Never Checked Out, is the latest in a long line of attempts to bring sense to the senseless. Lena Kerrigan, the journalist who reopened the case, narrates the final scenes. Her voice, steady but tired, delivers the closing line. Some stories are unsolved not because we failed to find the truth, but because the truth refuses to be found. And just when you think the screen will fade to black, there's one final moment, a found footage style clip. Grainy, timestamp 3:13 a.m. 3 months ago. A cleaning staffer filming on their phone walks the hallway of the Mountain Crest Lodge. Room 306 is in view. The door creaks. A whisper, low and urgent, escapes from within. It's not clear what it says, but when the clip is slowed down and enhanced, some viewers swear they hear it. A single word, Daniel.
They say every town holds a secret. Some are buried beneath years of silence. Others whisper through cracked windows, abandoned rooms, and stories passed in hushed voices. But sometimes, just sometimes, a secret doesn't want to stay buried. That's what Room 306 became. Not just a room, not just a number, a threshold between truth and terror. When Daniel Mayfield checked in, he carried more than luggage. He carried memory, guilt, fear, and something else we may never name. He was a man no one really knew, a man who had tried to rebuild, forget, live a life far from a childhood that cast long shadows. And yet, in that single night, everything unraveled, or perhaps everything finally caught up. Was he haunted? Was he hunted? Or was he just done running? We may never know, but something undeniable happened that night. Because when Daniel vanished, so did the silence surrounding Sadie Ellison's disappearance. Her truth surfaced from the earth, quiet, undeniable, and long overdue. The lost child was no longer forgotten. The whispers had faces, the rumors had bones. And now, Room 306 is sealed, a relic, a warning. Locals say the air near it runs colder, that no matter how many times you repaint the walls, her name still appears in the plaster when the light hits just right, that the mirror still fogs, even when the water's not running. Tourists come, paranormal investigators too. Some swear they hear her laugh. Others claim to have seen Daniel's reflection, older, worn, standing behind them just as they blink. But stories don't need proof to be powerful. They need belief, they need fear, they need curiosity. The same curiosity that brought you here. Because whether this was a story of justice finally served or a ghost still waiting for answers, one truth remains. Sadie was found, and Daniel remains missing. So the next time you check into a quiet lodge in the middle of nowhere, take a look in the mirror, look close, closer. And if you see a girl standing behind you, don't ask her why. Just leave the room and don't come back. At the Untold Trace, we uncover what others forget. Subscribe for stories where the line between reality and nightmare is paper thin.